right, well, welcome everybody to our open house. We really appreciate you all being here today to join us to learn a little bit about our Master's in Counseling programs at Palo Alto University. So what we're going to do is walk through a few slides, just give you a little information about our program. Then Shelby's going to talk through the process for applying to the program if you're interested. And we will have some time for question and answer at the end. We will also be paying attention to questions as they come through in the chat. So feel free to use the chat feature as we go, or you can also just save a question and we'll invite you to come off mute and ask your question and we will do our best to answer it. So just a couple of quick introductions of who is here with you today before we get into the slides. My name is Dr. Kelly Coker. I'm a program director for the MA in Counseling program at Palo Alto University, also a full-time faculty member teaching in the program. I work for Palo Alto from my home office here in Raleigh, North Carolina. So I've been with Palo Alto 3.5, 4 years. I don't know. I'm starting to lose count. A few years. It's a wonderful place to work. It's incredible faculty and staff, and we're always just really fortunate to have great students who come in and join us in our program, both in our residential hybrid program and in our online program. Dr. Snow, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Dr. Will Snow. I've been actually at Palo Alto. This is my 10th year. I was another place for 25 years, so I'm the old guy around, but hopefully young at heart. I've kind of seen the program grow from a handful of students to, almost like 400. But it's not just simply numbers. Really impressed by the quality that we have. We've got some great students, some great programs, and one of the reasons it's growing is people like Kelly. We've got some great faculty. I think our faculty have a national reputation. They both are great clinicians, but they've also published, do research, and we've got a great team. I wish you could meet them all, but if you join the program, you will. There's a lot of people that you're gonna love to work with, and we're just hoping to help you find your fit. So by the way, this is a no pressure sales pitch. In fact, there is no sales pitch. This is really about, as counselors, we want to do what's best for you as potential students. So hopefully what we're going to help you do today is, like we would do in any kind of counseling situation, career development, help you to make the best decision for you. It could be another university. It could be no university. It could be, I'm sticking with my job, whatever works for you. And so even if you're in the program, you're going to find that we're here to help you on your career path. So listen up, ask questions. Kelly will be running most of it. I'll be in the chat box. And if we don't get to your chats, we'll be able to email you and respond to them later. So Kelly?
Great, thank you. Shelby, why don't you go ahead and say hello before we jump into the slides?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Shelby, and I am the Senior Admissions Counselor for the Master's program. So I will have contact with all of you at some point if you do choose to apply, or even if you just reach out curious with questions about the program. So I really appreciate all of you being here. I'll make sure to drop my email address in the chat box as well. We also have Jessie Tatum here, who is a current student and works here in the admissions office with me as well. So Jessie, do you want to say hello?
Hi, everyone. My name's Jessie. I'm a second-year student in the MA program, and I'm currently in practicum. So I work at an agency, and yeah. I also will put my email in the chat box so you can connect with me if you like.
All righty. So again, thanks everyone for being here. Let me share my screen and we'll take a look at a few slides. So we already did some introductions. The one face you see on this slide that you did not meet today is Samia Wright. Samia is our Senior Department Manager. So she is the person that keeps Will and myself and all of our other faculty organized. She's the person that, if you join us at PAU, will really assist with a lot of your onboarding, with your registration. She is the keeper of a lot of knowledge in the program and a good person to go to if you just have general questions as you navigate PAU as an incoming student. So our MA in Counseling program is offered in 2 different ways. And please keep in mind when I say this, I'm talking about normally. We're not in the middle of a global pandemic. We normally operate as a residential hybrid program with 2 different campus locations, one in Los Altos, one in Palo Alto at our main campus, our Allen Calvin campus, which is a beautiful campus in the woods there in Palo Alto. And then our other delivery is our online program, so that our primary classroom is the space that you're in with us today, Zoom. We know a lot of people have become familiar with Zoom since the start of COVID-19 and the pandemic, but we have actually been operating in and using Zoom for a long time. All of our courses, all of our online courses are taught in Zoom. So it's a combination of synchronous and asynchronous work when you take an online class with us. Currently, because we are still dealing with COVID-19, our current state is that all of our classes are online. We expect them to stay that way for our winter quarter, which is our quarter coming up, and most likely our spring quarter as well, which some of you might be looking at as an opportunity for admissions. Beyond the spring, we don't know. We're of course hopeful, as the rest of the country and the rest of the world is, that we will soon be in a space where we're opening things up and getting back to normal. But the good news is, because we are already very adept at teaching at a distance, it has not been that difficult for our faculty and our program to pivot and make sure that we can offer all of our courses and experiences online. And we have successfully been able to do that for the past several quarters. Now, our program, if you've done some research, you may have found that both the marriage, family, child specialty and the clinical mental health counseling specialty in our MA counseling program are CACREP accredited. CACREP stands for the Council for the Accreditation of Counseling and Related Educational Programs. You don't need to know all that. CACREP is fine. And CACREP is responsible, it is the primary accreditor for master's level and doctoral level counseling programs. So what does this mean for you if you join a CACREP accredited program? Well, it is the recognized standard, for educational preparation for counseling degrees. It is increasingly recognized in states in the US as meeting the educational requirements towards licensure, and more states are recognizing CACREP. If you're interested in working with active duty military or working in Veterans Affairs, the Department of Veterans Affairs, the Army Addiction Program, and also TRICARE Insurance, which is the primary insurance for active duty military and their families, all recognize CACREP accredited clinical mental health counseling degrees as meeting the requirements to be hired as a professional counselor in those settings. Other benefits of accreditation is just that it's a mark of quality. Once a program is CACREP accredited, it's not a one and done. We continually have to meet standards for accreditation. We have to go through mid-cycle reports, annual reviews, and then we'll go through a cycle of reaccreditation at the end of our current accreditation cycle. So you can know that when you come into a CACREP accredited counseling program, that it is meeting the national recognized standard for counseling programs. So speaking of quality, Will mentioned this, we have an awesome nationally recognized faculty at Palo Alto University. There are currently 15 core faculty, including Will and myself. And these are some of the professionals that we have in our program. You can see that many of us wear multiple hats. We're professors, and then we also are coordinators or chairs or sponsors, So we engage in lots of different activities at Palo Alto, but this group of faculty really are experts in the field in many different areas like addiction, marriage, family therapy, clinical mental health counseling, and all kinds of other specialties, play therapy. Dr. Darlene Chin is our play therapy expert. So you can rest assured that when you join us at Palo Alto, you are getting the benefit of a group of people who not only know what they're doing really well, but they're also really known in the profession for what they do. So as I mentioned before, we have 2 delivery formats. And just to break these down a little bit over the next couple of slides. So normally, when we're not in the middle of a pandemic, you would look at either taking our residential hybrid program, and this is for people who live in and around the Bay Area, who have an opportunity to travel to one of our campuses for some of your courses. Some of your courses are still online, but in the residential hybrid program, you would also be taking courses face-to-face and on campus. The distance learning program is all online, so all of your curricular experiences are via Zoom and our learning management system, Canvas, where you have other activities and work that you do. Regardless of if you're in the residential hybrid or the distance learning, it is a 93 quarter unit program. It takes about the same amount of time to complete, about 2 years and 3 months if you take 3 classes per term. We do have an option for our fall admission period only, not spring admission, but fall admission. If you want to be in our distance learning program, but go at a little bit of a slower pace, we do have a cohort in the distance learning program starting in fall that would be 2 classes per quarter. So it would take a little bit longer to complete, about 2 years and 9 months. But again, it's still a 93 quarter unit program. So this is what it looks like. If you're in the residential hybrid program, again, you can expect to be taking about 3 classes a quarter. In your first year, once things are back to normal, what that would look like is about 2 classes on campus and 1 online. Currently, all of our students, as I said before, are taking everything online. After you're with us for the first term and you've taken professional orientation where you learn a lot about the 2 specialty areas, we ask you to declare an emphasis. So again, we have a marriage, family, child emphasis and a clinical mental health counseling emphasis. We do admit in a cohort model, so you will come in with a group of students and you will stay with that group of students if you follow your program of study all the way through the program. I think it's one of the things that also really sets us apart at PAU and that people really appreciate about our program, because you also establish some really good relationships with students in your cohort. So it becomes sort of an added support system as you move through the program. Generally, starting in your second year in the program is when you will enter your practicum and internship. Jesse mentioned that that's the stage that he's in right now as a student. And so when you start your field experience, your practicum and internship, the requirement is you will clock a total of 700 hours across at least 3 quarters. This is where you're actually working in the field and you're working at an approved site and you're doing counseling with clients under supervision. And you have both a site supervisor and you also have a university supervisor. And then once you get through your field experience, you finish up a course or 2 after that second year, and then you're ready to graduate. Very similar for the distance learning program. One key difference that's important to note is obviously you are taking your courses online, but if you are in our distance learning program, we invite you to participate in and attend 2 on-ground residencies. These would typically take place in your second term and in your 4th term. The first one is a counseling skills class and residency. So you're enrolled in a class, but you would join us on the ground for a week for intensive skills practice. And this is at one of our campuses in the Bay Area, either Los Altos or Palo Alto. The second residency aligns with 2 courses, our crisis and trauma course and our child and adolescent counseling course. And it again is an on-ground residential clinical intensive. So of course, because of COVID, we have not been able to do for the last couple of terms that we've offered these an on-ground experience. We are replicating them as best as we can in Zoom. I taught it this summer. It went really, really well. We did an intensive clinical skills practice in Zoom. I'm teaching it again this winter. We are certainly hopeful that by summer, which is when our spring admits might anticipate being involved, that things may have opened back up and we'll be back to normal. But whether we are or not, there are opportunities for us to really zero in on your clinical skills and do some counseling skills practice when you're in the distance learning program. And finally, just to show you a little bit of what it would look like if you're somebody who's interested in a fall start and would like to go at a little bit of a slower pace, not take 3 classes per term. This is what the structure of that would look like if you're in our distance learning program. So if you're taking 2 classes a quarter, you still have the 2 on-ground residencies, but your coursework would continue through your year 2, and you would actually start your field experience at the start of year 3 and then graduate. So it's the same program, same courses, same experiences, but those who may want to do it a little bit slower, say you're working full time, you've got other commitments, feels like a lot to do 3 classes a term, we do have this option. But again, it's only available for our fall starts, not for our spring starts. And Shelby can help in folks individually if you're sort of trying to determine when you would need to apply based on whether you're interested in a spring start or a fall start. So what are our 2 emphasis areas? One of them is marriage, family, and child counseling. The programs, the 2 core curricular for the programs are very much the same. The difference is if you're in the marriage, family, child counseling, there will be 2 specific courses in family counseling, couples counseling that you will take as part of your program of study. If you're in the clinical mental health counseling, you will take instead 2 electives, and there's a list of electives that you can select from if you're in that emphasis area. The marriage, family, child counseling program, we are approved in the state of California for to meeting the educational requirements for licensure as a marriage family therapist in California. One of the things you'll learn about when you come into the program in your first class is we talk a lot about state licensure. State licensure requirements are different in different parts of the country and for different kinds of licenses. So part of your job as a student when you make a decision about your emphasis is to really understand what are your state licensure requirements for the type of clinical work you want to do, and we help and support you in that process. But we are approved in California for that specialty to meet the requirements for marriage family therapy licensure. We also are approved in California to meet the educational requirements for the licensed professional clinical counselor license. And this would be one that you would get if you were in our clinical mental health counseling specialty. So it's important that you check state licensure requirements. There's a link on this slide that takes you to the American Counseling Association website where you can actually link to individual states and read state licensure requirements so you can see what it might look like for you if you are outside of California. And really, this just kind of gives you an idea, a snapshot of your potential for licensure in California, in other states, and as they might relate to some of those federal regulations I mentioned on the CACREP slide, looking at TRICARE or the VA or the Army Addictions Program. Where you see a green, we are confident that our program meets the educational requirements for that particular license in California, in other states, or to meet some of those federal regulations. Where there is a yellow, we would encourage students to just be sure you double check what your state requires. One of the things to know, for example, about a marriage family therapy license, many states actually require a different accredited program to meet the educational requirements for an MFT license. There's another accreditor called COAMFT, and they specifically accredit marriage family therapy programs. Because our program is CACREP accredited, it may or may not meet requirements for licensure as an MFT in other states. The conventional wisdom that we tend to say to students is that if you're in California, take a look at either the marriage family counseling specialty or the clinical mental health counseling specialty, depending on the kind of work you want to do. We meet the requirements for both in California. If you're outside of California, we really encourage you to consider the clinical mental health counseling specialty because it has the best chance of portability across state lines for state licensure. Will, I'm going to pause. Is there anything you want to say about this? Because I know you tend to explain this piece really well too.
Yeah, so first of all, let me just say that there is no reciprocity across states. Every license would have to be transferred, and it may take time. Unfortunately, we're very different from nursing. My daughter's a nurse. She could go work in Arizona next month, really quick. You're going to have to apply for your license at every different state. It may take some time. So what we do know is this. We do know that the clinical mental health counseling and normally some form of LPCC license pretty much is mentioned by 26 states and more by CACREP. They keep saying CACREP. So for that, we are covered. Marriage and Family has both what they call COAMP and CACREP. About 8 states mention both CACREP and COAMP for marriage and family. About 16 mention COAMP. A few require COAMP. So marriage and family is quite complicated. And let me also say that the other reason we also press clinical mental health counseling is that you're going to find that across the country, clinical mental health counseling or counseling in general is very, very large. Marriage and family is very small except for California. If you're in California, you're going to probably find that probably 70% of all MFTs in the country live in California. We have a huge counseling license. Whereas in other states, they're very small. So in California, if you say you're an MFT, you are part of the majority. If you're in other states, you're part of the minority. So here's the trick would be, if you ever determine if you're gonna leave California, I would definitely focus on clinical and mental health counseling. Now, you're gonna notice a little orange piece. As of January, they now said that the degree titled clinical mental health counseling is eligible for the MFT license as well. So you can have the best of both worlds. Now we have to make a few changes to our program. And I believe we're gonna do this. It says TBD. It should not be a big issue, but I think by the time you graduate, you're gonna find, and by the way, you don't get to choose your emphasis. Get accepted, join the program, and then you've got some time to work this out. So one of your things you're gonna do in professional identity, you're gonna kind of figure out like, what do I wanna do when I graduate? So anyway, you have plenty of time, but the best thing would be get into the program, get started, and then we're going to teach you about these various emphasis areas.
Yeah, thank you for that, Will. It can seem very daunting and confusing. I'm a licensed clinical mental health counselor in North Carolina. That's the license that I have, but I graduated from a CACREP accredited mental health counseling program. And under my license in North Carolina and in private practice work that I've done, I still am able to work with couples. I have worked with families. I do a lot of work with kids where I consult with parents. So the clinical mental health counseling path and license is probably the broadest umbrella under which you can do all kinds of clinical work. But as Will said, that in particular is not a decision you would need to make now here today to make a decision to apply to our program. We're going to work with you, especially in the first term, to help you tease out the options, to look at how they fit for you, for where you live, where you think you will be living, and the kind of work you want to do. So a big part of our experience in the program, and something we really want to be sure students, incoming students, understand, is that you do spend a substantial amount of time in your second year or in your third year, if you're in the slower track, in your practicum and internship. This is a minimum of a 3-quarter sequence where you are gaining clinical experience in an approved setting. A lot of students or prospective students ask, well, what if I work full time? Or what if I, have all these other busy responsibilities? Well, it's important that you take that into consideration and you really kind of be thinking ahead to when you're going to do your practicum and internship, and be sure that it's something that will fit in your life. Once you get into internship, if it's a 2-quarter experience, you've got to get a total of 600 indirect and direct contact hours during that internship. We do have people who work and continue to work. Some of them find placements that they're able to do in evenings or on weekends. We do have some people who already work in a mental health setting, and we can help figure out if it's possible for them to do their practicum and internship in that setting. The people on the slide here are the people who primarily help with that part of the process. Drs. Wathen and Jew are our directors of clinical training, who work specifically with our residential students and our online students to identify potential practicum placements, walk you through the approval process, answer all of your questions about practicum. And Sarah Kimball is the person who manages our training management system called Tavera. Tavera is used to log all of your hours, handle all of your approvals, and handle all of your evaluations. So this is an amazing team that provides a lot of support when you get to that point in the program. So a final slide from me. We've been talking a bit about licensure, and I think another thing that's important for folks to know before you enter a counseling program, if you're looking to get licensed as a clinician afterwards, which is the majority of what our students want to do upon graduation, getting the degree is just a first step in licensure. Every state licensure board has different requirements, so you need to look at what those are for your state. But in general, the steps that you see here, these are specific to California, but they're very similar in other states as well. Usually after you graduate, so your degree is conferred, you register with the board as a postmaster's professional. You have to continue to earn clinical hours under supervision even after graduation to satisfy the requirements of licensure for licensure boards. So in California, that's 3,000 hours beyond your degree. Many people are hired while they do that, by the way. They can be hired in an agency, in a clinical setting, under supervision, be registered with the board while they're continuing to earn these postgraduate hours towards licensure. Most states have an exam or two you have to take. California has a law and ethics exam, and then you also take a final exam right before licensure, either the one for counseling or the one for marriage and family therapy. And then you obtain your licensure. So I'm going to pause. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Shelby, is that okay if I switch over to you, or would you rather me?
Yeah, that sounds good. I have my presentation ready to go.
All right, awesome. That way I can help Will in the chat while you're talking.
All right. Can you see that okay?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Okay. So I'm going to talk a bit more about the admissions process and a few other resources that might be helpful to consider while you're applying for the program. So just to start, the admission requirements for this program include the application, your resume or CV, a statement of purpose, 3 letters of recommendation from professional or academic references, official transcripts, and then an interview if your application review is successful. So I just want to kind of talk a little bit more about the 3 letters of recommendation, because I do get a lot of questions about this. So they do have to be from professional or academic references. And that's a really important thing to remember when you're reaching out to folks to be your recommenders. I know that a lot of applicants I talk to haven't worked in a while, or they haven't been in school for a while. So if you haven't been in school for a while, they could be all 3 professional. If you're still in school, they could be all 3 academic, or a combination of the 2. For folks who haven't had any recent work history and also haven't been in school for a while, if you've done any volunteer work, you know, if you're a parent and you do any work at your kid's school or something like that, you can have the coordinators of those volunteer experiences be your references. If you don't have any volunteer experience, work experience, or academic experience, then, you know, reach out to me and we can talk about it. But in that case, I'd most likely recommend getting some experience volunteering before applying to the program, so that you have, you know, some experience to work from, and also so that you have some references that can write you recommendations. So if that might be a concern for you, reach out to me and we can talk more about your options. And then we'll talk a little bit more about some of these other pieces. The deadlines for the applications, for spring, it's March 5th, and classes begin in early April. For the fall, it is July 26th, and classes begin in early September. So someone did ask in the chat, you know, when to apply for fall or spring. If you can start your application now, I'd recommend doing so, and applying as soon as you can, because the process of applying itself takes a bit of time, and we have rolling admissions. So what that means is once we fill up the cohorts, we'll stop admitting people. So earlier is definitely better. Okay, so one thing that's really important before you even start the application process is to be aware of our state authorization. So there's a law that went into effect in July that requires us to be authorized in particular states before we can have students from those states. This is the list of states where we are currently not authorized. So if you live in one of these states or plan to be located in one of these states, I would encourage you to not apply to our program yet, and to check this list to see if it changes anytime soon. But if you have questions about it, please reach out to me, and we can talk a little bit more about what this means and how it might impact your decision to apply to PAU. One of the lengthier pieces of the application process is the transcript entry. So what that means is SciCast, which is the portal where you'll complete the application, requires that you enter all of your coursework, and it has to match what's on your transcript. And they will look at your coursework lists that you've listed and your transcripts to make sure they match. And it can be a lengthy process, especially if you have lots of transcripts, and you've maybe gone to a couple of schools, several schools. So I would plan to block out a significant amount of time to do this part of the application. The other option is you can pay SciCast to do it for you. They have fees set up for that. If that's something you're interested in, you'd rather they do it for you, then they'll just get your transcripts, do the transcript entry, and they'll reach out to you to let you know when it's done so that you can confirm it. But just something to be mindful of when you're doing your application, that this process can take a bit of time. So the interview is also a really, really important part of the process. So we'll review your application, and if everything looks good and you're recommended to interview, you will be invited to a group interview. So the group interview includes faculty, current students, and the applicants. So you're getting to hear and interact with, hear from and interact with our current students, as well as faculty and other applicants. And again, it's based on the initial review of your application. So you don't have to reach out to us to ask for an interview. We'll reach out to you to invite you if you qualify for an interview. But it's really important that you know that in order to be considered for a review and therefore an interview, your application has to be complete, which means all of the pieces of your application are in. Your recommendations are all in. All of your transcripts are in. You've uploaded your personal statement, your resume or your CV, and that it's verified by SciCast. So that what happens is once you've completed everything, you send SciCast your transcripts. They'll look over everything. If it all looks good, they'll update your application status to verified, and that lets us know that everything's good to go and we can go ahead and review it. Nothing is missing. So we had a webinar back in October, I think, about the admissions and application process and like all of the details around what to submit, where to submit it, what we're looking for. So Jesse, if you have the link to the recording handy, you can drop that in the chat, or I can drop it in the chat. But that's a really helpful resource when you're starting to do the application, because it's a lot of details about what you should expect from the process and what we're looking for out of your application. We're also having an interviewing webinar on the 14th. So it's really, whether you have an interview already or you don't have an interview, it's a helpful, it'll be a helpful webinar to attend if you want to learn more about the interview process, how to prepare, what we're going to be looking for. It'll be hosted by Dr. Speciali, I think, will be there. She is she leads the admissions committee for the Masters in Counseling program, and Elena Dunn, who is the vice president of admissions. So they'll be sharing more about getting ready for the interview, and it's really focused on the MA in counseling interviews, but the skills that they'll be talking about are really applicable to any graduate level program. So this year we have set interview dates for these group interviews. So these are the upcoming dates. And as you can see, we already have our first full interview day on December 17th for some of the early birds who got their applications in back in November and October. But we also have interviews coming up January 20th and January 29th. So they'll probably be at least once or twice a month until August. But if you are interested in interviewing, I definitely would recommend getting your application in, getting it complete so that you can be reviewed and considered for an interview. And as I mentioned earlier, you don't have to reach out to us to ask for an interview. We will contact you to let you know if you're invited to an interview, and we'll continue scheduling interview dates. So these are just the next ones coming up, but we'll have more throughout the rest of the year that we'll continue to invite folks to as we review applications. So these two folks are good people to know. Jessica Ayers is the Director of Financial Aid. So if you have questions about financial aid options, work study options, anything like that, Jessica Ayers is a great person to reach out to. This is the phone number, or their email is pretty easy to remember. It's financialaid@paloaltou.edu. And for this current school year, the current academic year, tuition and fees together tuition's $544, fees are $36, and combined the total cost of the program ends up being just shy of $54,000. So we don't have the tuition for 2021-22 just yet, but for the current academic year, this is where we are. And history has shown that it just kind of goes up a little bit each academic year. So you might expect it to be a little bit higher for the people starting in the fall, but around $54,000 is the total for the program. And if you have questions about that, about how to pay for school, things like that, you can reach out to the financial aid office. They're a really great resource, and they're very friendly, and they're also very accessible. Love talking to prospective students. Lisa is also a great person to know. So Lisa works with our military affiliated students, veterans, and also our international students. So if you have any questions about, visas or using military benefits, Lisa's a great person to speak with, and her email address is lharris@paloaltou.edu. So if ever later you're thinking about this and you really want to talk to someone in financial aid, or talk to someone about, being a veteran and a student, or you can always reach out to me and I can connect you with them. They're both really, really great people to know and to speak with if you have questions. So that's all that I have. I guess we can go through some questions. We have, I guess we're right about at time, but Dr. Coker or Dr. Snow, do you want to add anything or any questions that you want to answer aloud that you've seen in the chat?
There was a couple that maybe you're a better person to answer, Shelby. One had to do with if you can apply for more than one program at PAU at a time, like if you're interested in, say, the MA program and the PsyD program.
Yes, the answer is absolutely yes. You can apply to as many of our programs at the same time as you'd like.
And the second one was, do you know the numbers for our typical acceptance rate? Just didn't know that.
So not this last fall, but the fall of 2019, I believe that of the people who submitted complete applications and interviewed, I think 96% of them were admitted to the program.
Okay. And how about scholarships? Would that be Jessica's territory to answer those questions?
Yeah, reach out to Jessica Ayers in the financial aid office. There are not any PAU scholarships for either of the master's programs, but they may be able to point you in the right direction for external scholarships that you could apply to our programs.
Great. I feel like, Dr. Snow, we've done a pretty good job of staying on top of the chat. Is there anything that came up that you wanted to just speak to, or any other final questions from folks before we close?
Just to be aware of one thing is that the MA in counseling, and you're going to find this out, counseling and psychology are different disciplines. And a master's degree in counseling, generally the follow-on degree is a PhD, and we call it counselor education supervision counseling, but it's basically it's a master's degree that you have after you're done, and then it should be like 2 years plus a dissertation for that, what they call a CES, degree in counseling. If you wanted to go from our master's degree to psychology, it's whatever our psychology program won't give you much credit for that. It's a different field. The PsyD won't give you any credit. Just to be aware that there are two different pathways. And anybody's interested, we actually got our prospectus approved. So we're working on our PhD. So hopefully the time you graduate, you'll have an option for our PhD as well, but they are different disciplines. So if you really want to do a PhD in psych, then you should go to the psych route. If you want a degree in counseling, stick with us.
All right. Well, I believe that there's another open house meeting for folks who might be interested in learning a little bit more about the psychology department and what is offered there. So we'll go ahead and end our meeting so we give people a chance to jump over to another one. We really appreciate your time, your attention, your great questions in the chat. Reach out to Shelby if you want more information about the process of applying. Jesse's also put his email in the chat if you just have questions from a student perspective. Dr. Snow and I are both on the admissions committee, so we look forward to hopefully seeing you soon in an upcoming group admissions interview. So thank you all so much and have a wonderful rest of your Saturday.